and contestants training, because frankly, if you are a contestant, it is going to be hugely beneficial to understand how the heck the judges are scoring humorous speech contest. Who has been to a humorous speech contest? Okay, here's another question. Who has seen a humorous speech that left them shaking their heads going, what the heck was that? Anybody? Okay. That will be much less common after today with the training that we are going to go through. Do we have any Star Trek fans here? Now, I'm not talking about the subpar Star Wars that George Lucas did. I'm talking about the real Star Trek. Luke Picard, William Shatner. They had, anybody? Star Trek? Okay. Star Wars fans? Good. Ah! There was a prime directive in Star Trek. Does anybody remember what that prime directive was? Starfleet Command is forbidden from interfering in the development of any alien civilization that it comes across. That is their prime directive. Now they violated that almost every other show, but that's okay. It was their prime directive. I, too, have a prime directive regarding humorous speech contest. Feel free to write this down. Art, go ahead and go to the next slide. A humorous speech is a speech. I know, you're probably saying to yourself, Jeffrey, that's not very profound. Big deal. Well, it is. If you've seen some of the humorous speeches I've seen in contest, what does that mean, it's a speech? Have you been to the International Speech Contest? Of course, most of you have. You have speech with opening, structure, close, a body. You have a message. You have a point for that 5 to 7 minutes with you that you share with people. A speech is not a comedy routine. A speech is not a list of inappropriate metaphors that you share with us for 5 minutes. A speech is not an improv skit that you put on the front stage. It is a speech. But you don't have to just take my word for it. I have handed out something that I created for this training, a comparison between the humorous speech ballot and the international speech ballot. Who does not have one of these? Really? Now, take a look at this, and you're going to notice something right away. There are 3 categories. There are 3 major categories by which we judge a speech. They are the ones that are kind of hard to read because they're in the narrow box and it's vertical. Anybody want to tell me what that first category is? Anybody?
Speech development.
No. You're looking over to the left. Look over to the right, 1 column. It's a major category. Content. Who said content?
Dati.
Help yourself to a donut after class. That is right. I will jump to the chase here and reveal that there are 3 major categories for a speech content. They are content, delivery, and language. Notice on this sheet that I have put the humorous speech content first and the international content next to it. Someone please tell me, how many points does content get overall in the humorous speech contest?
55.
55 is correct. Help yourself to a donut. Now, scoot over to the international speech. How many points do you get?
50.
50 is another correct answer. This is a smart room. That is almost identical, folks, but it gets even better. Please look at the delivery section. In the humorous speech, how many points does the humorous speech give?
30.
30 is correct. Would you please, in the back of the room, because as you learned from my previous class, sitting in the back is no escape from being recognized. Please tell me in the international contest how many delivery points you get. 30 is the correct answer. Absolutely identical between the 2. Finally, there is a 3rd category called language. On the humorous speech contest, Mike, would you please tell me how many points are in the language category? 15 is the right answer. Rachel, would you please scoot over to the international speech contest and tell me how many points are in the language category? 20 is the correct answer. Folks, the ballots are almost identical. Almost identical. I can't stress that enough. So when you come to the international speech contest and you see clearly recognizable speeches, you should see very similar things in the humorous speech contest. It is not a time for a comedy routine. It is not a time for a wild improv lesson. It is not a time to tell all those inappropriate stories that you did want to tell in the international, but this is the humorous, so I think I can get away with it. No, you can't. Now, I've seen some speeches like that win, but that will never happen again because you're here today. In the humorous speech, there is one and only one category that is different than is in the international speech. Does anybody happen to recognize that? Now, this is kind of buried, but yes, Elizabeth.
Audience response.
Audience response is the right answer. Please go ahead and help yourself to an organically grown vegetable after the meeting. Elizabeth, my wife, she's a vegan, so that's why I know donuts. No, there's going to be no donuts around here. In fact, when I go out for an apple fritter, I have to hide it. Okay, I will read this with you. Audience response, attentiveness, laughter, interest, reception, 15 of the 55 content points. Now, to get those 15 points, they pull 5 points from the language of the international, and they pull 5 points from speech development and 5 points from effectiveness. Other than that, folks, the international speech ballot is absolutely identical to the humorous speech ballot. A humorous speech should have a point. It should have a message. It should make it worthwhile for you to listen to those 5 to 7 minutes. Now, it doesn't have to have a life-changing message. I made the district finals with the all-important message, don't buy an RV. Not life-changing, but everybody who heard the speech knew what the message was. I made the district finals with another life-affirming message. Sherry, can you guess what that was? No, because you weren't there. But that's okay. Even though you're sitting over in the corner, I like to pick on you anyway. Because as they learned in the back of the room, there's no escape from the front. My previous district final message was, don't rent a houseboat in Lake Powell when you have no idea what you're doing, because you almost drown. But it was a message. You were there? Oh, okay. But it was a message. So a lot of times in the humorous speech contest, you'll hear speeches that have a much lighter message than you hear in the international. That, by the way, is one of the reasons I actually enjoy the humorous speech contest more than I do the international. I hate to admit it. Because the international, you hear a lot, and I've heard hundreds and hundreds by now, you hear a lot of the same messages going on. Mom, apple pie, motherhood, follow your dreams. My friends, I don't mean this in a bad way, but if I never hear another follow your dreams speech in my life, it'll suit me just fine. As soon as I start to hear one of those and I hear, oh God, he's going to do the follow your dreams thing, not again. So, in humorous speech, again, you get messages just way out of the thing, but you should have a message. Now, we have a real treat here, folks. Toastmasters International has not really gone digital for a lot of training, but they have put together a very good video explaining the international speech ballot. Since, as you have learned, it is almost identical. I want to use the Toastmasters training and will follow along with their training as they explain the various categories of the ballot. I forgot to introduce my previous division chief judge, my good friend, and the gentleman without whom I wouldn't be able to do this training, because most of what you're going to hear today I stole directly from Art Grossman. And I told Art he had to show up to help me today, because if he didn't, I would present all this training and take full credit for it. Unless you're in the room, I steal and take full credit. Oh, that's right, I forgot that point. That is important. Before we go to the video, you have a critical role as a judge. What is that role?
Pick a winner.
What else do you do as a judge? Nothing. Nothing. You are not an evaluator. You're not watching the contest saying, oh, gee, I would do this better. I would do this differently. Gee, I think they should do this. No. You are there for one reason and one reason only. On that day, on that speech, to pick a winner. Now, I have to tell you a funny story about this. I was competing in the last cycle in the humorous speech contest, and I made the division finals, and I spoke before another young lady. I was not really that great that day, and I knew it. I'm usually a pretty good judge of my own performance. She came on and knocked it out of the park. You know what I was thinking when I was sitting there? Because I've seen this happen before against me, where somebody gives their result to someone because they've known them, or you know, he's a good speaker, so you know he's a better contestant to move forward. I'm sitting there going, they better not give the victory to me, because she clearly beat me. I was actually afraid I was going to win, and I'd already decided that if the judges gave me that victory, I was going to go to her and say, I can't make the contest, you represent the division. Because I just can't stand the idea of what was clearly the second place speech that day having somehow, because of any kind of favoritism or the fact that I was well known in the district, elevated over what was clearly a superior speech. So just remember the key. You all have biases, but your role as a judge is, in that contest, on that day, for those speeches, pick that winner. That's it. Your job as a contestant? Win! Exactly. Now I hear people all the time come to me and they say, oh, Jeffrey, I don't want to win, I just want to compete. I want to inspire people. I just want to touch hearts. I don't really care if I win. Bull! You want to win, don't you? Yeah, of course you do. We all want to win. The reason we say things like that is because it hurts so much when you try to win and you lose. I know, I've been there. Work really hard, get there, think you got the best speech, and don't win. But that's how we improve. By getting there on that day and giving it the very best we possibly can and trying to win. And if you don't win, oh well. It hurts a little bit and then you move on. But we want to win as contestants. So I don't want anybody coming up to me and saying, I don't want to win, I just want to touch hearts. I want to share my message of love with all of you. No, you want to win. And after today, that will be much easier, because you know how the judges score. Now, Art, if you would go to the next slide and start the video.
Welcome to Speech Contest Training, Session 3, the Judge's Guide and Ballot. We've covered a lot of important concepts in Sessions 1 and 2. In this session, we'll move to the practical side and discuss how to use the Judge's Guide and Ballot. Let's get started. The Judge's Guide and Ballot is laid out in two parts. The top part will help you decide the winner and will not be given to the counters. The bottom portion is the official ballot. It will be given to the counters and must be complete, showing 3 different names for first, second, and third place, and your signature as the judge. If it is not complete, the chief judge will discard the ballot. Everyone develops their own system for making decisions. There is not one accepted method for filling out the Judge's Guide and Ballot. One suggestion for eliminating bias is to refrain from using the ballot at all during the speech. Instead, take notes about what the speaker does well and poorly. When the speech is finished, use your notes to enter the point values for each category on the ballot. This way, you're not overly influenced by one category, and you can focus on the speech instead of on the ballot. When points are totaled, determine who you have ranked first, second, and third. If there is a tie, use your notes to refine your scoring. Remember, speech contest judges must always break their own ties when submitting their choices for first, second, and third places. Here's an idea to prevent prior speakers from influencing the current one. Write the names of the speakers in the top row. With each new speech, fold the ballot to hide the previous speaker's scores. The more you serve as judge, the more comfortable you'll become. In the meantime, let's get familiar with the ballot itself. You'll notice there are 3 basic judging categories:
Could you pause?
content, delivery, and language.
You have a number 1 task as soon as you receive that ballot as a judge. Does anybody know what that number 1 task is? Mike.
Sign it.
Sign it. I cannot stress this enough. I have been a ballot counter many, many times, and it breaks my heart when I see a perfectly good ballot, someone worked hard to be a fair judge, and they did not sign their ballot. By rule, I have to discard that ballot if I am the chief judge. So please, as soon as that hits your desk, sign it. Okay? Just want to stress that.
You can't go out and go to the judge if you're a ballot counter and say you forgot to sign it. No.
Yeah. Please, sign it as soon as you receive that before you do anything else. Please continue.
The question.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to just add to that. When you write the name of the contestant for first, second, third, write their first and last name, so if you have 2 Jeffs in the contest, it doesn't have to be thrown out for that reason too.
Yeah, what they say here is exactly right. All we want is the bottom ballot. It has to be signed, and we want the names, first, second, third contestants. Russ?
Yes.
Okay, and that's it. I see people doing first, or I have them marked as a tie, or again, 1, 2, 3, that's it, plus your signature. You have done your job, and you've got a valid ballot to us. So please, sign that ballot, just write the names in, we are good to go.
Is the volume all right for everybody? I'm trying to find the control. All right.
Just because you can't hear.
The first category, content, is worth 50% of the speech points. It determines the quality of a speaker's message, its development, effectiveness, and value. When you think about the development of a speech, keep in mind its structure, organization, and support material. Is the speech structured with a clearly defined opening, body, and conclusion? Is the purpose clear and well defined? After considering the development, think about effectiveness, taking care to focus on the speaker's achievement of purpose, the audience's interest, and the speech's reception. How does the audience react? Is the subject matter relevant to the audience and occasion? Is the subject matter clear to the audience? Then, think about the speech's value, noting the speaker's ideas, logic, and original thought. Does the speaker have something to say, a clearly defined message? Does the speaker's message contribute to the listener's knowledge and stimulate their thinking? Okay.
Thank you, Art. Any questions about content? Remember, for the humorous speech, the only thing that's different is you have an audience response. How's it? Audience reaction category?
Audience response.
Audience response, which is 15 points. Other than that, it's identical to the International Speech Contest. And it's 55 points, 55% of the score. So again, you could listen to the funniest speech you've ever heard. This guy should be a professional comedian. But if it doesn't have actual content of a speech, if it doesn't have a good speech structure, if it doesn't have a message that you can understand clearly, it's not a winning humorous speech. It may be hilarious, but it is not a winning humorous speech, and that is important. One quick other tip before we leave content. I was fortunate to just spend 4 days in Las Vegas at what was referred to as Freedom Fest. It was a huge convention of conservative right, libertarian presenters and thinkers, about 2,500 people, as a matter of fact. Most of the presenters did not follow a lot of the delivery tools we have learned here in Toastmasters, but they had content that just kept you on the edge of your seats. If you've gone out to see some of those TED presentations, are you familiar with TED? www.ted.com. These are these technology, entertainment, and design speeches, but they've branched out. A lot of the speakers aren't really great delivery people, but you will learn quickly that content is king in every speech. If you have a content of interest to your audience that is compelling, you can violate almost all the delivery rules and people will still be on the edge of their seat. So remember, humorous speech, no different. Content is king, just like the international.
Jeffrey,
Yes?
I just had a comment or about the content on speech value. The original thought, that would be where you would mark somebody down if they were not delivering something original.
Well, original thought, that's a very good question. The question is, how would you rate original thought if it's something you've heard before? I have to tell you folks, having competed in the International Speech Contest and listened to 30 years of finalists, there are no original thoughts. It doesn't exist. I'm serious. There's not a single message that has won the International Speech Contest that hasn't been presented before, and usually won. You see some messages have been repeated a half a dozen times to win the international speech. What is unique is your take on that message. If your message is the importance of love, folks, that's probably won 6 or 7 of the International Speech Contest. There's nothing new. There's nothing new to say, Mike, as our division judge, I love you. Not like I love my wife. That's a different kind of love. But I love you. See, love is a universal message, but it is still a very important one in speech, but you have to present your own take on it. Okay? Unique story, unique aspect of it. That's where you come into originality. Don't worry if it's a message you've heard before. Believe me, you've heard them all before.
I just was wondering, well, that goes into disqualification more if they are using something else. Okay.
Art?
Since the content category is worth 50% of the points, you're halfway through. The second category to judge is the delivery. Delivery is about the way the content of the speech is presented, and it represents 30% of the points of the speech. Delivery is both physical and verbal. Consider the physical delivery. Focus on the speaker's appearance, body language, and use of the speaking area. Does the speaker look neat and appropriate? Do the speaker's gestures have purpose and complement the speech's message? Do the speaker's facial expressions match the emotional side of the message? The second aspect of delivery is voice. Consider the speaker's flexibility and volume. Does the speaker's voice have a good quality? Does the speaker's voice modulate to show feeling and emotion? Is the speaker's volume adequate? Are words spoken with clarity, or are they slurred and indistinct? The final aspect of the speaker's delivery to focus on is manner. Pay close attention to the contestant's directness, assurance, and enthusiasm. Does the speaker believe in the message? Is the speaker clear and confident in sharing the message? Does the speaker speak with and convey enthusiasm for the message? Howard?
Thank you, Art. Before I joined Toastmasters and started looking at speaking seriously, I thought delivery was speaking. I really did. I thought content was almost irrelevant. Now I've done a complete 180. Content is the king. Delivery is not irrelevant. It is still important. It is worth 30 points on both the humorous and the international speech. So this is identical on both ballots. But as you can see, 30 points is not 55. 55 is content. A lot of times in delivery, it is a distracting mannerism that can drive you crazy. I'm fortunate to attend the monthly, what's referred to as Western Industrial Nevada, or WIN, breakfast with a wonderful speaker. And there was a young lady giving a presentation on a great topic. It was the importance of nutrition and fitness, and I liked her content. However, this is the way she presented the speech. flip her hair. The entire 50 minutes, back and forth 3 times with a hair flip. She had long blonde hair. I could not watch her after 12 minutes. It was driving me crazy. It was like, I was mesmerized. Back, forth, back. Flip the hair. Flip the hair. So please, watch out for those distracting mannerisms. The great Craig Valentine, who, by the way, will be appearing in our district conference this coming fall. He is a fabulous instructor and speaker. And if you haven't signed up for the district conference, please do so. I've heard him speak at least a dozen times. I learned something every single time. But the great Craig Valentine says, when you move on stage, you move with a purpose. If you have no purpose to move, stand still. It's much easier on the audience. So again, delivery 30 points. Watch out for those distracting mannerisms. That's where you're going to tend to, as a contestant, lose points with a judge. Art?
How are you doing so far? Just one more category left, language. The language category is about the speaker's word choice and grammar and counts for 20% of the speech points. Within the language category, you'll consider both appropriateness and correctness. First, think about the appropriateness of the speaker's language. Focus on the appropriateness of the language to the speech's purpose and the audience being addressed. Does it fit the speech, audience, and occasion? Does the language promote understanding of the message as the speaker intended? Along with appropriateness, think about the correctness of the language. Here, we're focusing on the speaker's grammar, pronunciation, and word selection. Are the speaker's grammar, pronunciation, and enunciation good? Is the contestant's diction or word choice effective? Does the speaker's language reflect study and preparation? So what do you think? There's a lot to consider when filling out the judge's guide and ballot.
Thank you, Art.
Let's
through with this
review.
video. You've now seen the entire ballot. Are there any questions? And again, almost identical to the humorous speech contest. So you can see the overlap, and that's why I'm doing it this way, to make it clear. Now, on the language category, one observation. This is one area where it's not a disqualification, but it's one of the few times I give someone a 0. And if you get a 0 in any category as a contestant, you can't win. You can't overcome that kind of bias. And the 0 is if, and this never happens in the international, but unfortunately it does happen in the humorous speech, if you use inappropriate language or inappropriate references or something like that, folks, you're getting the big donut. This is not the venue for that. You want to go down to the comedy club and open mic night or something like that. So again, you don't see it often, but you do see it unfortunately, and you're not going to win any contest where you do it, at least any contest where I'm judging on my particular ballot.
I just want to make it clear, since this is a judge's training, that as Jeffrey said, he may give a donut, but you don't have to give a donut. It's how you feel the appropriateness is, and they have categories there, whether it's excellent, very good, good, or fair. So I just want to make it clear that they don't have to give a 0 if they hear inappropriate language. That'd be correct, Jeffrey?
That is absolutely correct. I'm just telling you what I do.
Exactly. And can I bring up one thing? They
Absolutely,
seem
Mike.
to drop off on the speaking area, at least to define what that is. And I think it's what you said about the purposefulness of the person using the area that they have to speak in, as opposed to a judge defining the speaking area and somebody possibly stepping out of that area. So it's more how the speaker is using the stage or the area there with their movements. That's kind of what that category is about.
I will tell you that on any contest where I'm chief judge, I'm not defining a speaking area. And I'll tell you why. It's because I've been a competitor so many times, and I really don't want the judges or anybody else telling me where I cannot speak. As you've probably noticed, I have a tendency, just pass it back please, I have a tendency to wander out into the audience when I speak. I can do that on contests unless I'm on a stage. And consequently, even if a judge, and my good friend Art knows this, because Art, although he defines very generous speaking areas in all the contests, I think I've violated those sometimes.
All I used to say was that you can speak anywhere you want, but if you turn your back on a judge, you risk losing points. That's how I say it.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'm never going to define a speaking area. Russ?
I would say, since this is for contestants and not just judges, if you want to violate the speaking area and you know that before you start, when you're in the briefing, say, can we redefine the speaking area because I'm going to use more than that in my speech?
Yeah,
Almost
that's possible
any
too.
chief judge would do that.
By the way, here's another thing, and again, this is just from the contestant's perspective. This is just Jeffrey's opinion. Whose opinion is it?
Jeffrey.
Thank you. I have on occasion, my good friend Art or somebody else defined a speaking area. Not planning to go outside the speaking area beforehand, I make a decision to go outside the defined speaking area. Why? If you're on a stage with 8 or 9 contestants, folks, you got to stand out somehow. One of the ways to stand out is to do something unexpected. I guarantee you no other contestant is going to walk out here and explain to someone something on the back row. So a lot of times, if it's a tough competition and I'm looking for a reason to stand out, as long as it's not in some awful negative way, as I discussed earlier, I'm going to violate those rules. And the recent international champion, Ryan Avery, he crawled on the stage imitating picking up cigarette butts. Now, no other contestant that year did that, and I would never do it because I was afraid I couldn't get back up again, and I'd have to deliver the rest of my speech from my knees. But, just something to keep in mind as a contestant, you want to stand out, but in a positive way, so that in that judge's mind, it's, oh yeah, that was the girl that came out and talked to that member of the audience thing. You know, I remember her. She was hilarious and had a good point and all that stuff. So don't be afraid of standing out. Yes?
Could you give us some advice on how to do something like that without turning your back on the judge? That's why, one of the reasons I'm hesitant to do something like that. I don't, that turn the back on the judge thing inhibits me.
Oh, I have to say, my friend Art is brilliant, but I don't agree with that comment. Now, you were in my earlier training, and I wandered around to the back. I had my back to all of you all the time. Were you offended by that? No, it was just part of the presentation. Well.
There's no way to really guarantee that you wouldn't turn your back on a judge if you walk in the crowd because you don't know who the judges are.
That's right. They're anonymous anyway, so I really don't worry about that at all. If it's organic to the presentation, if you're doing it for a good reason, really, I don't worry about that. Now, some people have counseled me to get out here. I'll get to you in just a sec, Mike. Some people have counseled me to get out here and then go, okay, thank you for your comment. You know, work my way back. Oh, give me a break. I'm going to trip over this gentleman's leg right here, and then I'm delivering the rest of my speech from my back. So as you can see, don't ride a motorcycle in the sand. Whatever. Mike.
Two things. Number one, people our size, usually if we back up like that, have to have the warning.
That's right. Beep, beep, beep.
Well, I just wanted to comment from a judge's perspective. I don't worry about they define space. I'm more interested in the content, what's being said, and where they're standing and what they're moving. Sometimes it becomes a much more effective speech and effective delivery than staying in one place.
Yes, absolutely. But remember, when you move, what are we going to do? Move with a purpose. But if you don't have a purpose for your moving, just stand still. That's a very effective way to deliver a speech.
But like you, that was my opinion and my perspective.
So that's Mike's opinion. Whose opinion was that?
Mike's.
Russ has an opinion. Russ?
I do. I think in almost any kind of art, and speaking in this way is an art, it's good to know all the rules so that you can break them very effectively and creatively. I mean, that's the best musicians, that's the best painters, that's the best speakers. They're doing something different.
Exactly. And that's why I made the comment, like Art said, when a judge comes out and defines the speaking area, I almost always, as a contestant, make a decision right there that I'm going outside that speaking area, if I can. Now, I've been up on a big stage. You can't really leave the stage in a 7-minute speech. But as a general rule, if there's some way, in a positive way, to stand out, I'm grabbing it. Art?
I just wanted to clarify. First of all, I come from a club where in evaluations, as soon as you make a 10-degree turn, it's mentioned. So that's my personal background. I come from a club where they always tell you, turn your back on the audience. But the other thing is, I look at this as overall. If the break of the speaking area, quote unquote, is effective, then obviously I'm not going to deduct points for it. So I take it as a whole. However, if someone gives a speech and walks down the aisle and winds up giving half the speech the aisle with their back to the audience for half the time, yes, then I will deduct for it. So,
Elizabeth?
Opening inanities. I'm wondering if some judges, under speech development structure or some of these things, if they are voting down when a person doesn't open with what we are told in some of the manuals.
Very good question. The question is what I refer to as opening inanities, and we all know what they are in Toastmasters. Fellow Toastmasters, guests, what is it? What is it? Art?
honored guests.
Yeah, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, judges, God-fearing Americans, contest chair, I don't know.
Food provider.
Yeah. First, I want to start off by thanking the organizer of this contest. What a lovely day we have, because, you know, you didn't know that yourself before you came in. And this again, this is just Jeffrey's opinion. Whose opinion is this?
Jeffrey.
I never use an opening inanity in a contest. I've got 7 minutes. I'm not going to waste 12 seconds of it, more or less, with that nonsense. Plus, what an awful way to start your speech. I want to come out and grab you from the very first sentence of my speech. The very first sentence. And if I start off with, fellow Toastmasters, friends, Romans, countrymen, you're already tuning me out. Here's the converse of that. Some people will, and this happens on the international stage, some people are afraid of getting what we refer to as old guard judges. They expect to be addressed. So somewhere in their speech they're going to work in fellow Toastmasters, usually with some sort of humorous effect. I don't disagree with that. However, I would point out something. World champion Ed Tate, who spoke at our last conference, said that the entire contest cycle, he never wasted a second on those opening inanities. Not in the beginning, not in the middle, nowhere. He said, if you're going to mark me down for that nonsense, so be it. But I'm winning this contest on my own terms. I do not want to waste a second on these, and if you've seen my contest, only on the occasion where I could work it in organically for humor, which you've occasionally said, you know, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and anybody who has ever really made a big mistake. After opening with a big mistake, I'll sometimes work it in. So that's a very good question. You have to decide as a contestant what to do. As a judge, you can make your own decision, but believe me, I don't even notice if someone doesn't use opening inanities. I do notice if they wasted 12 seconds of my time with it. It's not like I marked them off for it. I don't do that. But it's just one of those little, no, that was a waste of 12 seconds. Any other questions? Sherry?
There were, I don't think it was these contests, but there was a contest where I went and it was on the district level, I believe, and the contestants all made jokes addressing the audience, saying, fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guests, and the most beautiful judges I have ever seen, and, you know, or the most best-looking judges. And yes, it's a joke, but is that something that's really appropriate? How would we?
Like I said, I don't, as long as it's not inappropriate language. The question is, can you make fun of the fellow Toastmasters guests and the most beautiful judges or something like that? You know, if you can work it into your speech and you want to, I don't care. I mean, it really doesn't bother me. I wouldn't call it inappropriate. I still would call it a waste of 12 seconds, more or less, of your 7-minute speech. But that's for the contestant to decide. I think these days most judges don't really care whether you use the standard forms of address, consequent. I can tell you, I've not been penalized for it. I made the district finals in all 4 disciplines, and in humorous speech, I made the district finals 4 times. I don't think I've been penalized for not using it. So make your own choices on that. Yes.
Any other ideas? Let's say you do have 8 or 10 contestants in a contest, and anything to help us when they said something they referred to of folding away previous people. Unless you started at number 10, I
That's
don't
the way
see
you
how
have to do
you
that
could
to do
do
that.
it.
Yes, the question
So-
is, are there any tips for actual judging to make it easier, especially if you're in a full contest of 9? The one they suggested maybe was folding it over. I know some judges that do that. I don't. And I'll tell you why.
I do like this.
Remember, as a judge, what is your one and only duty?
Pick a winner.
That's right. So, even though in an evaluation process, I'm not comparing you to any other speaker, whenever you get up and speak as a judge, I'm automatically comparing you. I want to see everybody right in front of me, because as the contest goes on, I am ranking people. And I'll tell you, it's cruel if you got a big one, because here's what will happen. Let's say the first speaker comes up and he's great. Okay, he's got a 94 on my ballot. I give him an A. I always put a letter grade at the bottom of mine. This is just me, but I put a letter grade because I spent 18 years in education, and everything is a letter grade. So the first thing I do on the ballot is I let the speech wash over me. Where's he going? What's he doing? I'm listening to every word, everything he's doing. Then the first thing I do is turn and go, that feels like a B to me. That's all. And then I go and mark my ballots, how they doing this content? What's the delivery? Distracting mannerisms, all the things we've talked about. And then I work my way through. But here's what else I'm doing. As I'm looking at these things, I am mentally ranking everybody. So the first one was great. The second one, not really there. I rank him. I go ahead and give him a score. But mentally, this is kind of cruel. That's what I mean about being cruel. I've dismissed him with the phrase I call NC, not competitive. Then I move on. What's the third speaker? Oh, wasn't very good. NC, not competitive. He still gets a ranking, because sometimes I'll look at those rankings, I've got to pick a third and a second. But I'm saying if the first one was good, okay, she set the bar. Now beat her. Beat her. Nope, didn't beat her. Nope,
That's
didn't
what I
beat her.
do.
Nope, didn't. Oh, whoop, whoop. Uh-oh, okay. Beat her. Okay, now you're number 1. All right. Now this is number 2. Now beat him. Beat him, beat him. Nope, okay. 1, 2 is obvious. Then I look at my score and I've got my third placer. Yes.
The first speaker, like you said, kind of sets the plumb line. Do you ever find yourself, after listening to second, third, fourth, fifth speaker, going back and readjusting your first speaker based on how they compared with the other speakers?
No, I rank them. However, I will tell you bluntly, I have given a first place to someone who didn't score higher. And the reason is my scoring kind of changed as the ballot went on, and sometimes it's not an exact science. But I rarely pick someone I didn't give the A to, because that's easier for me. I can, give the letter grade. What was my overall impression of this speech? It was an A-. Okay? So an A- always beats a B. But the B sometimes might have had some higher scores, because that's a guideline. It's a very helpful guideline. It's a very useful guideline to try to make it objective. But again, it's just a guideline. And number 1, you want to pick that winner. So I'm always kind of comparing each one as they go on. I saw a hand over here.
Do we have to turn in this guideline?
No.
Very good question. Do you have to turn in the guideline for your speech as a judge? No. You only turn in that bottom ballot. That is all we want to see. Just a quick comment on your very good question. I recently had a conversation with my wife, who's engaged in another contest, and if you think about it, the way we do it in Toastmasters is about as fair as can be. Because, imagine, if you will, you're the type of judge that starts everybody with a 0, okay? And you say, wow me, earn some points here, earn some points. As a general rule, across a broad spectrum, you're going to have lower scores overall, just the nature of the way you approach it. Now, let's say over here, you start everybody with 100, and you knock them down by 1 or 2 points. They're not really killing me with the content. Their opening wasn't that great. But you're going to tend to have a higher score in that thing. Now, because your job is to just pick the winner, 1, 2, 3, that doesn't matter that you use different techniques. However, if we based it upon total accumulated score, his ballot would count a lot more than yours simply because of the raw number of points you tend to give speakers, because you start with 100 and move it down. I've actually seen contests that do it that way, and I think it's a horrible, horrible way to do it. Because clearly, you're a better judge than he is, and that's not fair. So, yes?
2 things Jeffrey neglected to say yet. One is with all of this, you only have 1 minute to do all of this. That's it. Between contestants, there's only 1 minute, and at the end, it's 2 or more minutes to finish up. So you only have, between contestants, only 1 minute to do your scores. The other thing that he didn't say was, oh God, did I lose it?
But it's actually not 2 or whatever minutes. When it's done, it's until they have tallied everything, until they're done. After the last speaker, the
It's until the ballots are done.
Yeah.
The rules used to
until
say
they
2
finish
minutes.
it.
Now they simply say until all the ballots are complete.
Yes.
Art makes a very good point, because a lot of people, especially new judges, feel rushed in that 1 minute. Let me change text for just a second. We'll be wrapping up this here. Then we're going to pause, and for those of you that want to stay for the mock contest, which we'll have after a 5-minute break, I encourage you to do so. It's fun. We've got some videos. But I want to let those of you that have attended the training and don't have time, because I'm a bugaboo about ending on time, an opportunity to leave. Let me say this about this. I give a seminar on goal setting. One of the exercises in that seminar, after I've laid the groundwork, is everybody gets a piece of paper. You've got 30 seconds. Write your top 3 goals in life. 30 seconds to write your top 3 goals. Seems like a lot, doesn't it? Here's the interesting thing. It's actually based on academic research. Academicians have done research endlessly on goals, and you know what they discover? If you give someone 30 seconds to write the 3 goals, or 30 minutes, or 3 hours, or 3 days, they come up with the same 3 goals. So why waste all that time agonizing over it? Just do the exercise. That's what it's going to be. Now, why do I share that story? Because your ballot is the same way. Don't agonize. Your first impression of what was the content here? Did they have a good structure? Your first impression is the right one. And if you had 5 minutes, and if you had 10, or if we gave you an hour to evaluate each speaker, you'd probably come up with the exact same answer that you come up with in 1 minute. So just make it quick. What's my impression? What's my impression? What's my impression? Boom, off we go to the next speaker. You'll come up with the same answer, you really will. Elizabeth.
What's this business about anonymity as a judge, and how do we maintain it? Because obviously if someone's coming around and collecting ballots, people are seeing, oh, I just saw her, she must be a judge, you know? I don't understand the
Yes, the rule is
anonymity.
that all judges are confidential and they shall remain confidential. And of course, if you have a club with 8 members and 5 judges, nobody's going to guess who those judges are. It only really works in a large venue. I have to say, though, that once you get pretty much to the area contest level, where you've got 20, 30 people, it's not that easy to pick out who the judges are. Because even if you're not a judge, I know a lot of you probably do this, I score the thing anyway. Who's to say I'm not a judge? I'm taking notes, I'm doing a scoring thing. I could be one of the judges. So,
Jeffrey?
yes.
Yeah, I did see the other thing. No one, but no one is to see the top part of your ballot. When you're done judging, turn it over so no one passing your desk even sees it. You don't share it with other judges. You certainly don't share it with contestants. What you can do is if the results didn't match what you did, you can take it home and look at it to see where maybe you made a mistake if you did. And look at it that way, but you don't share that top part of the form with anyone else.
Thank you.
My friends, we are going to take a brief break for those of you that have to leave, I understand. This concludes the training portion of the judges. If you haven't signed the sheet, please make sure to do so. Don't leave without signing the sheet. You're all free to go, and we will reconvene here at noon to have a fun mock contest where you will use those humorous speech ballots. We have videos that we're going to watch, and what's especially fun about the mock contest, since there's nobody here on the stage, we can say anything we want to about the competitors, is we're going to call upon people to say, okay, how did you score them on content and why? What about their delivery? What were your thoughts? Believe me, it's a great way to learn, A, as a contestant, how to improve your own speech, and B, as a judge, how other people are viewing things. You may see things that you didn't see. So with that, thank you so much, and I'll see some of you back here at noon.